You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This podcast is sponsored by IBM. IBM is a leading hybrid multi-cloud solutions company, accelerating the creation, development, and manufacturing of the industry's most advanced information technology for companies around the world. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Shelby Skrhak, and our guests today are Chris Farrell, VP of Automation Value Services at IBM, and Manoj Khabe, Vice President of Enterprise Management Solutions at Converge Technology Solutions. Chris, Manoj, welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Likewise.
Well, today we are talking about IT of observability with IBM Instana, but I want to understand a little bit about the relationship of IBM, Instana, and Converge Technology Solutions. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about your journey with Instana.
Sure. Well, IBM acquired Instana right at the beginning of 2021, or right at the end of 2020. Instana was founded in 2015 by a set of 4 experts in APM. They had all been very successful doing APM things. And they saw a thing coming down the road, the containers, Kubernetes, cloud native. And they knew that the legacy APM tools were going to struggle. And this is not because legacy APM tools are bad tools. They were just built to do something else. And so they set out to take all that they knew about APM that was good and all they knew about APM that wasn't good and kind of make a super version of it. And of course, over time, that became observability, because observability has elements of APM in it, but it goes well beyond what APM tools think about doing. And so they built the company, and they hired a lot of other people with APM experience, like myself. And we were very fortunate and happy to have a successful few years independently, and then they get acquired by IBM. And it's been a great 2 years of being inside IBM as well, being very successful, and the company still operates very well as the enterprise observability provider of an IBM solution.
Okay, so that integration has gone well and seamlessly then.
It's been fantastic.
Well, so Manoj, can you tell us about Converge Technology Solutions and how you work with IBM?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. First of all, thanks for having me. Converge Technology Solutions is a premier IBM business partner. We are a software-enabled and a cloud solutions company. We focus delivering the industry-leading solutions and services. We being a global company, our global solution approach helps us to deliver solutions around analytics, app modernization, cloud platforms, digital workspace, especially in the remote work era and so forth. So we work very closely with technology partners, IBM being premier partner for us, to leverage this platform to deliver the solutions to our client. We leverage our best practice methodology, offering advisory solutions to implementation services to manage services expertise across all the different IT vendors in marketplace to help customer adopt these solutions. So our really goal is to be a trusted partner of a customer, of IBM, to bring these world-class solutions that IBM has to offer and help customer to adopt those solutions to be more efficient, reduce the cost, and be competitive in the market space, right? So Converge and IBM working together would like to offer that competitive advantage to our customers.
Yeah. Well, you said some magic words there about reducing costs and increasing efficiency, and I want to come back to those things. But going back to kind of the big topic for today being observability, so Chris, we had discussed this idea of observability, but to kind of recap and expand, what is observability and how is it different than the legacy APMs that you talked about?
Well, observability it includes aspects of APM in it, but I think to understand why observability exists, you have to kind of look at where applications have evolved in the last 6 or 7 years. And it really started with the acceptance of, or the desire to move to microservices, which got very fast adoption of container technology, specifically Docker. And then you add on an element of complexity like Kubernetes, which is used to, of course, manage the provisioning of those containers. And you've created a extremely complex environment that is also extremely dynamic, or as my favorite word of the decade, ephemeral. And it's always changing. And so what ended up happening is a new way of monitoring this new technology was needed. This has happened before. It's why APM exists. 20 years ago, APM existed, got created to deal with a lack of visibility in Java applications. And then as those grew to distributed Java applications, a new version of APM tools got created to deal with the ideas or complexities of that distributed information. We're dealing with a whole different level of complexity. The lines are blurred between software and infrastructure. The lines are blurred between code and not code pieces of your applications. And the lines are also being blurred in organizations as they try to move faster. And so development, operations, right? DevOps, site reliability engineering, the idea of trying to achieve continuous delivery, all these things are creating pressures on the tools to keep up with both velocity and also complexity. And so that's where observability was born from, because you can't just have this code-centric view of the world anymore. You have to understand what all of the services are doing as part of an application environment. And you have to understand the connection between software layers and infrastructure layers, many of which are just additional software layers, and being able to manage that full stack all at once while also understanding what it's doing to end users and what it's doing with resources. And so observability is kind of this all-encompassing ideal of how do you deal with all of this together. And that's the biggest difference. Of course, the definition, I'm doing air quotes, the definition of observability to the world is metrics, traces, and logs. But we don't think of it in that way. We think of it in how organizations can use data more efficiently and better.
Well, Manoj, you see this from the partner perspective. And so when you look at observability, I mean, Chris said it, this is more than just numbers on a single pane of glass. It is, I guess, can you tell us what it's really used for and why that's important? I guess what's the essence of observability's benefit for companies?
Yeah, no, I think just to add to what Chris mentioned, right? I think from a partner perspective, what we are seeing is the customers are, going through the different set of challenges while they're modernizing these applications. I would like to use like a car analogy, right? I mean, think about these different parts that you can build a car, whether it's a tire or a seat or, the wheel or different indicators and gauges and, instruments and so forth. Those are like microservices, right? And you have been asked to, hey, take these microservices and build a car, So obviously, how do you build it, right? When you have been asked to go from a typical 3-tier architecture where you have a set of modern way or a certain set of application process versus now you have been asked to build this new modern fancy car with so-called microservices, thousands of different parts being thrown at you. Which parts do I use? How do I use it? Is it safer to use? How do I maintain and manage it, right? And even though eventually you build the car / you build the application, do my application have all the features I want? Is my application being properly architected? What happens when something goes wrong? Do I have a visibility to look at this car, right? So imagine when the car is built, would you really drive the car without having a center console, center dashboard, and not knowing the speed of the car and the temperature of the car and the fuel of the car, or maybe an EV vehicle, the battery status of the car, right? So I think this is the analogy that we see is very important, aligns with what we are seeing in this modern application, development. Modern applications have increased the complexity that IT leaders face today. The rise of microservices, the cloud native, other distributed systems have made the challenges of ensuring application performance greater than ever. And what we believe is to meet these challenges, two fundamental aspects must coexist. One is high quality code of your application and the resources to ensure that such code executes without delay, optimally at a high performance. And that's where we believe observability platform offered by Instana is really important. It's key to successfully deliver their modern applications.
Well, I am a huge fan of analogies, and Manoj, that's a very adept one. Chris, what would you add to that then? I mean, I guess what makes the use of Instana important, and I guess more importantly, more urgent today than before?
I think the biggest difference between making a decision to move from one version of a tool to another or upgrading slightly is that we're talking about applications that are so much more complex, that are so much more critical to our business, by the way, and that deal with so many different types of users that by not having the right tool in place, you're actually risking a catastrophic event. And the catastrophe is going to come. It might come in a year. It might come in 4 months. It might come in 2 days. If you're running new technologies and not using new observability aspects, ideals to monitor them and to make sure they're running. And the catastrophic effect could be as small as you have a bunch of users that can't access accounts for some amount of time, whether that time is 1 hour or 1 day, or it could have a much larger effect where it could affect bottom line or even the viability of a business, depending on how important an application is to the operation of said business.
Well, I want to come back to Manoj, what you said about reducing costs and increasing efficiency. So, Chris, I'll come to you for the efficiency part of it,
Sure.
and Manoj, follow up with you about reduced cost. I mean, I know yours definitely perked up when you say those two things. So, what do you mean, Chris, when you say that Instana can make developers more efficient?
So it's really interesting to talk about a tool that you don't actually necessarily have to use developers to use to make work and say that makes developers more efficient. But that is exactly what we're finding. Companies, customers that have gotten Instana in average about 30% of developer time going back to their developers. Now, there are actually several different ways that this can happen. One is if they're actually having their developers instrument some level of details, monitoring, metrics into the IT systems, then one of the things that can happen is that you no longer have to have those developers write the very basic monitoring aspects, things like load, latency, error rates, right? Those things are tracked automatically by Instana. So the developers, if they want to, when they do their instrumentation, whether it's with an OpenTelemetry or Jaeger or some other open source API, they can actually focus more on things that you don't get from a monitoring tool, like what a parameter was, like it's a gold user or a platinum user, or where something came from. Of course, we know where things come from too. But the really cool thing is since we integrate all those things together, they don't have to go rewrite anything. They don't have to do that. So there's efficiency up front. We also, since we automate all the other parts of understanding data, you don't have to have developers sit down with your operations team and tell the operations team what different pieces of the application do, because you don't need to know that ahead of time. You don't have to map things ahead of time. There's no setup of dashboards. We actually don't even require people to set up thresholds for alerts, because we're going to go figure out whether or not an alert needs to be set. And we're also going to then provide information to all the different users that's exactly what they need. And that's the last step of making developers more efficient. Eliminating the need to get everyone, all stakeholders together whenever there's a problem, so that everyone together can figure out what the data from the tool means. Instead, we're going to figure that out, and we're going to say, you know what, there's an incident, there's a service problem. The problem is on this server, and it appears to be this code. So, Jim, you go fix the problem because it's on your code. Susie And Angie, you don't have to come to the meeting to sit around for an hour. And the three of you, along with 20 ops people and 4 DBAs and 3 business owners, are going to sit around for an hour and try to figure out what all this data means so that we know, then can assign Jim to go fix the problem. Instead, Jim's just going to get the data and he's going to start fixing the problem. So we see, again, floor, basic, minimum, 30% developer efficiency back. We've had some organizations get 50% or even 60% of their developer time back.
And this goes down to the line of code. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty cool when you think about it. And of course, APM tools had the ability to do line of code at sometimes, but it's really incredible for me to think about, because I've been in this business for 20 years, what we had to do just to get some basic information 20 years ago versus now we have the ability to take measurements at 1 second, all measurements at 1 second, to trace every request across every piece and service and have code level visibility and even have production profiling, which is, serious debugging information for developers, all with just, a fraction of the overhead that we took up 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it is really cool to think about all the information that's available now.
Yeah, you're right that, it wasn't just the challenge of solving what the problem was. Once you did all that sleuthing, then you had to figure out how to fix it.
Exactly.
So that's a big weight off. Manoj, tell us about, the reduced costs that comes associated with being able to pinpoint problems and, get faster to solutions.
Yeah, Shelby, absolutely. I mean, just to piggyback of what Chris mentioned, right? I think in next generation applications, the slowness is new down. The having performance problems new down. So it's very important to really have the automated instrumentation of entire application processes, the performance, the errors, the logs and changes, and to really understand the impact of that change in real time helps you to improve what we call mean time to identify, and thus improve the mean time to isolate and respond. Being able to really tie that with your real-time CI/CD pipeline, you don't really wait after the fact. You basically tie that pipeline in real time and understand the impact of the change in real time so that you can quickly diagnose the problem and actually lower the business impact of that problem, essentially helping you to gain the efficiency and lower the cost of your operations and maintain the applications. And Instana being a simple single instrumented solution, single agent instrumentation solution, it gives you even easy to use and quicker time to market, essentially helping you your overall operational cost of rolling out your applications and managing them.
Well, as we do start to wrap up our episode, we always ask our guests the same final question. And that's, where do you see technology going in the next year? And I know that's broad, but, within this space and what you're seeing, where are we going to be in 2023? Manoj, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, Shelby. I mean, this is, I would say, we're just scratching the surface. The developers have been challenged to roll out new applications much faster, much quicker. And the only way that they can do is basically leveraging latest and greatest technologies being available at their disposal to really build those applications faster, right? So what I see is this is the operational challenge is going to increase day by day to get the visibility into their applications. So the infrastructure is getting more and more complex, from legacy monolithic applications to microservice architecture to going into a software-defined infrastructure that application sits on. And back in days, we used to have probably 3 or 4 technologies being used for building applications, right? But now being able to roll out applications fast is only possible by using the latest and greatest tools available, which probably in hundreds of tools out there that developers use to develop the applications. And I think in order to stay competitive, you want to release your applications and releases and features and functions faster, maybe weeks, right? Not months. And that's why when you have this modern applications, you need that platform like Instana to meet those new challenges.
Chris, how about you?
To me, I think of that question, and in reality, I think of all the really interesting technology in our hands today. In our hands, not meaning Instana or IBM, but the IT industry, and how there's still so much that we can leverage that we already have. So we talk about things like hybrid cloud and multi-cloud and now super cloud. The truth is that what we're really talking about is organizations, and Manoj really hit on it, modernizing their applications, but doing so in a way that makes the organization better. So to me, the future of technology is actually kind of a morphing of an organization to deal with or be able to better address the needs of the marketplace by speeding up, right? So these are things we've been talking about for 5 or 6 years, embracing CI/CD. And I always like to say, not everyone can get to continuous delivery, but everyone should be striving to get to continuous delivery, because the faster you are in your development pipelines, the better off you're going to be, the more responsive to the market you're going to be. Well, to do that, that means you have to put in new methods for developing, testing, and deploying your application, your services, your different pieces, right? Which means you have to have tools that now all work together. For example, instead of you deploy a new piece of code and then you wait for the monitoring tool to come back and tell you if things are good, and then if things aren't, then you go, I have to go roll back my code. How about you roll out a piece of code and 1 second later, the monitoring tool knows that there's a problem, and instead of you having to wait for it to tell you, which by the way, with Instana, that would be another 2 seconds later. But instead, after those 2 seconds, Instana will just tell Jenkins, hey, this piece of code that just got rolled out, it's bad, roll it back, right? So these increase confidence in organizations, and that confidence will allow them to start really leveraging all the technology they have at hand. Operations teams will no longer be scared to have developers pick 6 different database services as part of an application, because each particular service has a specific need or function that fit a need for that developer. Developers will no longer feel like they're not getting the information they need to be more efficient in their code, and everybody will at least now feel happy that we're all on the same page and moving the same direction. So it's not that it's new technology, it's just a better use of our old technology, of our current technology.
Right. That makes sense. Well, Chris, how can we, if listeners have any questions about something we talked about today, or want to find out more, how can they reach out?
So, of course, they should always, if they have an IBM partner, reach out to their IBM partner. IBM partners are very well versed in Instana and IBM products, but you can learn anything you want about Instana at instana.com. It's still a live website, still going. And in fact, we have 2 really cool things on there for people that just want to get started. We have a free trial that people can use and just start right in on their own applications. But if they don't have an application ready yet that they want to throw it on and look at, we have a thing that we call Play With that allows them with just a very quick little button to get in and start playing with a real Instana instance managing a real application running environment. So you kind of get a feel for everything is. And actually, we kind of have a few scripted ways to walk people through and understand what it is they are seeing and how to handle it.
Excellent. Well, Manoj, Chris, I appreciate the conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having us. Great. I enjoyed the conversation. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks very much. Really enjoyed it.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. If you'd like this episode or have a question, please join the discussion on Twitter with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Until next time, I'm Shelby Skrhak.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. This episode was sponsored by IBM. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production with Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton. To not miss an episode, subscribe today to your favorite podcast platform.